So like many of you, I've been playing Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced and I'm having a great time. It's really awesome to go back to this awesome game from my childhood and just see it with fresh new eyes, with new graphics and new systems that are hit and miss in some cases. And I think it's important that as fans we sit down and talk about what Ubisoft could learn from this release, because there could be some really good things that come out of this, or they could do like they usually do and take the wrong lessons from whatever they do and just make things worse, which happens all too often for most video game companies, not just Ubisoft, to be fair. But yeah, as you probably saw, Ubisoft hit 3 million copies sold within the first 8 days of the game, which is pretty cool if we compare it to Assassin's Creed Shadows, which within the same almost time frame, it took 7 days actually, they had 3 million players. But the wording here is important because players and copies sold isn't necessarily the same thing, because you could have more players that are signing up through Ubisoft Connect or any other subscription services, or it could just be physical copies that people just pass on to each other once like finish the game. Obviously, nostalgia is going to play a big part in these sales, but also we need to take into consideration what people are saying online and how word of mouth is affecting releases like this. But also a massive factor would be just the investment that Ubisoft is putting behind these two games in comparison. Obviously, Shadows is going to be a much more expensive video game to develop because there's systems that are developed specifically for it. It's a completely new game in the series, so obviously the story is going to be unique, all the locations are going to be unique, all the map and all the quest designs and everything. When it comes to Assassin's Creed Black Flag, they obviously were able to recycle a lot of the old stuff from the old games, such as voice lines, quest design, and all the art style and everything that comes with it. So it was a lot cheaper to develop. So is it more profitable? Obviously we don't have all the numbers, but I think it's safe to assume that it might be a better return on investment. And with that comes the question, should Ubisoft make more remakes? We will talk more about that at the end of the video, but let's go into the good things that Ubisoft can take from the release of Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. Number one is that short linear stories are more impactful. Obviously a massive complaint with Shadows and other Ubisoft RPG games, especially Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but also, in my opinion, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I thought that game was freaking long, man. Took forever to finish. We do know that Ubisoft is doing this on purpose. They are basically padding game time in order to sell more microtransactions because they have the data. They know that the more time we spend in these games, the more likely people are to spend extra money for the extra skins that they can take, or even the time savers, because the games are long, so they're trying to sell you a solution. And it's important to note that Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced is not a long story. It's essentially the same story from back in 2013 with some added stuff, obviously most of it being side content. When it comes to the story itself, it obviously has a clear beginning and a clear end. And it doesn't go with this live service model where they occasionally add new updates that add like side stories and occasionally conclusions. I know that Assassin's Creed Shadows had its last update not too long ago, but I honestly have not played it yet. I am planning to, but when the conclusion of a story comes so late after release, I think that that really takes away from the impact that the story would have, because frankly I'm completely disconnected from the rest of the story, and while I am interested in the finale, it will probably not have as big of an impact as it would have if I played it back in March of 2025. And plus, let's talk about the linearity of the story. Obviously, a linear story with a beginning, a middle, and an end is gonna be a lot more impactful than a story that could be tackled from each direction that you want. So as you probably know, in Shadows, you can kill whatever target you want in whatever order you want. So what that means is that Ubisoft needs to take into consideration that some players are not going to play in the same order as other players. So when it comes to targets, they need to be not too connected in between each other, because if you go for target number 3 before going for target number 2, the story is going to be all messed up. So they need to be like their own contained stories, which usually leads to them not being that great, and the all the emotional investment that you put into them wouldn't really be too worth it. There wouldn't really be a big payoff at the end, since they're all like independent stories from each other. Number 2 good thing to learn is that motion capture really is important in these games. Obviously, all the cutscenes that have all the motion capture, all those unique animations that are designed for those cutscenes specifically, are gonna be a lot better and a lot more memorable than just all the characters hitting the same pose every now and then. You know, this thing. So please, Ubisoft, stop it with all those Odyssey animations from back in the day. It was funny then, and it was pretty revolutionary back then because you could create all kinds of cutscenes with different animations here and there. But when it comes to handcrafted stories, it really takes away from it when you see everyone doing the same gesture over and over again. The combat obviously doesn't have to be so RPG-ified. We're talking about a grounded style of video game here. So all the enemies that you're fighting are humans, except in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. For some reason, we had Cyclops and Medusa and whatever. But when it comes to humans, one human is not necessarily much harder to kill than another human. You would think, at least. So instead of making all these enemies more bullet spongy, can we please make them more harder to reach? If you want to increase the difficulty of the game, for example, add more of them and more guards all over the place so you can sneak through the places a bit more difficultly. That is not a word, but I'll just go with it. And grinding in these games, while I like grinding in games in general, when it comes to Assassin's Creed, it makes no sense. And plus, the simple combat in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, I personally like it. It's very flashy, it looks awesome, and it's not too difficult. So if I am to have a one-on-one fight with anyone, even if it is a boss, it's not too hard because we are playing as humans against other humans at the end of the day. And we don't need Dark Souls style bosses in these games. If I wanted to play Dark Souls, I would go play Dark Souls. Another awesome thing, the fact that the game is available on Steam at launch is a massive win for the gaming community. I know that while Ubisoft was on top of the world and they released Assassin's Creed Valhalla and their stock price was super high up, they could afford, at least they would think that they could afford putting their game day one on the Ubisoft Connect thing and then adding it to Steam afterwards, and so that they would hope that everyone would buy the game on Ubisoft Connect. But now basically they don't have a choice, so it's awesome when players have more options like this, and the fact that it's on Steam makes it so much more accessible, especially to controller players. Even if I play on PC, I like using my controller to play these games, and it's built within the Steam overlay. I don't have to connect anything, do some extra behind the scenes magic to make it work with the Ubisoft Connect. So, and I understand that Steam takes a cut from all those sales, so Ubisoft doesn't keep as much of the profits as they want, but god damn it, the platform sucks. And lastly, the final good thing about this game is that finally, after over 19 years of this franchise, you can manually toggle your hood. I mean, technically you could do that starting from Assassin's Creed Origins, but there's no animation to do it seamlessly in gameplay. You could have to go through a menu to do it. And same thing for, I guess, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where you could just like toggle your helmet or whatever. But finally, we could do that. Back in the original game, Edward would just put his hood on during restricted areas, but now you can do it whenever you want. Although, a problem with this is that in cutscenes, the hood is still down for some reason. Even if you're approaching the cutscene trigger with a hood on, the next time the camera shifts, your hood will be off. So maybe if they could fix that, that'd be great. And now for the bad things to take, or at least to not take, from this release. There's quite a lot of them here, and it doesn't mean that Assassin's Creed Black Flag is a bad game for having made these decisions, but it means that these decisions, if they are to be made again with a different game, it could lead the downfall of that game, or at least the public perception of it. Number one is that the main character doesn't have to be an assassin. It could just be a Viking, or a gladiator, or maybe in future entries, it could be a cowboy with supernatural powers, or a tribesman with supernatural powers, or a witch with supernatural powers. I'm braced for Assassin's Creed Hexa. I don't know if it's gonna be good. Apparently they're removing a lot of that magic from the game, so all the magic systems and all the spells that Elsa, or whatever the main character's name is, would make, so thank God for that, because I do want a grounded Assassin's Creed story, please. But Black Flag, even if the main character, so Edward, isn't an assassin until the end of the game, it still worked because it took that Assassin's Creed philosophy, you know, freedom, nothing is true, everything is permitted, and all those like sayings, and it applied them to pirates. And basically, even if at face value you're talking about freedom and doing whatever you want, the pirate philosophy and the Assassin's Creed philosophy is different, and Edward learns that the very hard way, and that's why the story really works, because it still takes those core assets or those core aspects, I guess, of the Assassin's Creed, because that's the name of the game, right? And just applies them to the pirate setting. But you're not just playing as a pirate for the sake of playing as a pirate, because in other games, you are playing as X because this is an X game. You are playing as a Viking because it's a Viking game in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It doesn't really have anything to do with Assassin's Creed, even though lore-wise, Eivor is indeed connected to the Isu, so I don't hate that game per se, but it would have been nicer for Eivor to be part of the Assassin's Brotherhood. Or at least for them to explore that Assassin's Creed a little more in that game. Another bad thing, in my opinion, is that when they made this remake, they took that mission structure originally from the game and realized that a lot of people didn't like the tailing missions, for example. So what did they do? They made it not mandatory to tail your target. In the original game, if you were caught while tailing a target, you would be essentially desynchronized, so you'd have to start over from a checkpoint. In this game, if you get caught, you get to a sword fight, and then you get to kill your target and loot a note off their body or whatever. I personally think this is a lazy way to approach things, because you can't really like fight your way through everything, and it makes for the game to be a little worse in my opinion, or at least the story to not make as much sense. And we shouldn't always have an easy workaround from the main objective. While it is annoying, yes, to be desynchronized because you are getting caught, there should be some other way to achieve your goal that is not just a pure fist fight. Another bad thing, and this really annoyed me a lot with this franchise as a whole, even in the past, I don't want them to come to the conclusion that people just want more naval fights or naval gameplay. AC Rogue, in my opinion, was already annoying because of that. Although the setting made sense, we were still basically a few decades after Assassin's Creed Black Flag, so those types of sail ships were still a thing, and there were still cannon fights in the waters, and obviously the location being the east coast of the United States and a little bit of Canada, it made sense to have a boat. But by then, in my opinion, it already grew old to have naval combat every now and then, when I just wanted to play as an assassin, or in Assassin's Creed Rogue's case, a Templar. I wanted to play a typical Assassin's Creed story on the ground, so it was really a breath of fresh air for Unity to come out, to not have any ships whatsoever, only for them to introduce them again in Assassin's Creed Origins, and then Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and then we didn't have them again until Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, because in Valhalla we did have a boat, but it was for navigation only, so thank God for that. In Odyssey, it really made sense given the setting, you know, the Greek archipelago, is that how you pronounce that word? For you to be able to have a ship on those waters, because there's a lot of water in Odyssey. I think it's still the biggest map in any Assassin's Creed game, so it does make sense that Ubisoft gave you a way to traverse it. But when it comes to mandatory combat, like in Black Flag, again and again, it kind of got old. It feels good to go back to it with Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, so it does feel nice to go and canonize everyone. But that's because you cannot have a pirate setting without a ship system, right? But I don't want them to take this system and then carry it over to yet another ship game. And last thing, microtransactions. I really don't see a problem with gaming companies wanting to make money on their products, right? But when it comes to the cosmetics, making absolutely no sense within the lore, breaking everything, that's when it's very annoying. And plus, it's really in your face. Within the first hour of the game, you get prompted, even if you're playing offline, that there is a store and that you would enhance your experience by buying a demon outfit for Edward. I personally think that's the stupidest thing ever. And you could argue, I guess, that it doesn't really impact me because I wouldn't ever buy them. but it's still, I don't know, there's I'm bad at explaining it, and maybe I shouldn't have a reason to be bothered by it, but it really bothers me that it is an option that we have in the game. However, even if I said what I said, I don't think Ubisoft will take anything into consideration, because according to Alinea Analytics, on July 14th, so a few days after the release, they made a report detailing the numbers behind Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, and apparently they made about $1 million from day one DLC. If you take into consideration the short time frame that they had since day one and whenever this July 14, that's a lot of money, because more people are going to buy it. There's going to be more DLCs that are coming, and if you take into consideration the cost, the additional cost that it took to create those skins, it probably took a guy, I don't know, a few months. Let's be generous. Let's say a few months. Let's say 6 months of a salary. Even if that guy was paid 500K a year, take half, 250, and you still make a big profit, because the system of the store was already implemented in the past games anyway. So I don't know, man. They're making a lot of money on this thing. And last point that I wanted to talk about, where I think a lot of people are going to disagree with me on, so I'm not speaking for the whole community here, I'm speaking for myself, and then you please let me know what you think in the comments, if you agree or if you don't, which is fine. I don't want more remakes of Assassin's Creed games. I know there are rumors, and it's probably real, that they're working on an Assassin's Creed 1 remake, and that could work because Assassin's Creed 1 is the least accessible game in the franchise. You can only play it on not last gen, but the gen before consoles, and I don't think it's really supported with Windows. Maybe you can play it on the computer. I don't even know, man. But when it comes to the Ezio trilogy, for example, they already made like a PS4 version, which is also compatible with PS5s, because it is backwards compatible. And obviously Assassin's Creed 3 also had a remaster that you can play on PS4 and therefore PS5 and the Xbox equivalent as well. So right now the only game that you cannot play on modern consoles would be Assassin's Creed 1. So it would be a way for Ubisoft to bring this old game, this old experience into new players' hands. However, they need to do it well. If they are to remove the modern day from Assassin's Creed 1, like they did with Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag in this case, I would argue that it would be possible for Assassin's Creed 1, because you would I'll tell you your story and then be done with it. But if you are ever to remake the Ezio trilogy and not put Desmond, it would make absolutely no sense. If you are to make an Assassin's Creed 1 remake and you do include Desmond and you redo that story, you add some things, you re-record some lines or whatever, that would work, and that would tie into Assassin's Creed 2 and then Brotherhood and Revelations and then eventually Assassin's Creed 3. Did you keep up? These are 5 games that you need to remake if you do Assassin's Creed 1 with Desmond. You cannot have Assassin's Creed 1 with Desmond and Desmond's story ending at Assassin's Creed 1, because that ends on a massive cliffhanger, and then no one is going to try to get Assassin's Creed 2 and then all the games that come after, because those games are not modernized. Sure, they hold up well, in my opinion, because I'm old, but I'm not going to expect little Timmy, who just finished or is still in high school, to play Assassin's Creed 2 or even the Ezio Collection on PS4, because these games are not as fluid as recent Assassin's Creed games. So it would be a very big money opportunity for them to reintroduce Desmond to new audiences and then re-release Assassin's Creed 1, 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, and Assassin's Creed 3, and then ended there. And then obviously Assassin's Creed 4 was just remade in 2026 right now, and there's no modern day story. Another issue would be Assassin's Creed fatigue. Remember back in 2013 when let's say 2012 when we got Assassin's Creed 3. I personally have not played Assassin's Creed back then. I was 12 years old. I started the franchise in 2012 and then I caught up eventually. People were already sick of these games because we had so many of them. I remember during the days with Unity and Syndicate, these games, Unity had some hype behind it and then it was a disappointment because the game was broken. But Syndicate was basically polished and a very clean game, and it was also a very good game, but not a lot of people played it because people were so sick of the franchise back then. And if you tell me that we're gonna get 5 other remakes of games that we've already played before without all the mystique that was back in the day, that people are not gonna get bored. I don't know how that's gonna be. I understand that it's a big money opportunity for Ubisoft, but holy crap, people are not gonna wanna keep playing these games that much, especially considering how similar Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations are gameplay wise. And I mean, knowing Ubisoft, they're gonna make basically all the games the same gameplay anyway. Oh, and why they cannot make the Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations without Desmond? If you haven't played these games, I highly recommend that you do, because these games are amazing. The story is great. I mean, you could click away from this video if you don't want any spoilers, but I'm going to be a bit vague with the spoilers. Desmond essentially interacts with Ezio in these games, and Ezio at some point has a conversation with Desmond. Not directly, but he does mention Desmond in one of his speeches, I suppose. And you can't have a conclusion to Ezio's story without mentioning Desmond one bit. And if people are playing these games, these suggested remakes that I'm making right now, they will not understand who Desmond is, and it would not have as big of an impact on Ezio's story without it. And if you do remove Desmond from this equation, you're removing a big part of Ezio's story, which would really, really suck. Anyway, that's just me being a nerd talking about Assassin's Creed. This isn't even an Assassin's Creed channel. But if you do want to talk more about Assassin's Creed, I'll be happy to make more videos on it, because I do love these games. And I am enjoying Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced as well very much. As I said at the beginning of the video, it's awesome to revisit this location, this game, this story. But there are good things, there are bad things about it. And I just hope Ubisoft for the future takes all the good things into consideration, and also the bad things into consideration of what not to do in the future. So thank you very much for listening to me ramble. I open the floor to you. If you want to let me know your thoughts, please, the comments are open. So yeah, do that, and ahoy, I don't know, enjoy Assassin's Creed, play Black Flag, whether you play the original or the remake, it doesn't matter as long as you play it. It's an awesome game with an awesome story, and this is an awesome channel with awesome videos, so subscribe and leave a like. Yeah.